After 11 years, we finally have a new film in the Shrek franchise, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 6 films in the Shrek franchise from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 6 Shrek films. As a point of reference, I did not grow up watching the Shrek films. The first movie came out when I was like 20 years old, and 20-year-old Sean was not rushing out to see Mike Myers play an animated ogre. Real quick before we get started, I got one quick announcement. Next month, I will be at Fan Expo New Orleans. Then over the next couple months, I'm planning it being at Fan Expo Portland, as well as Cleveland, and then MegaCon in Orlando. In New Orleans, I'll be doing a fan meetup, and then I'm leading 2 different panels. One of them will be a live recording of a ranking for my main channel, as well as a panel on how to grow a nerdy YouTube channel. You can find out more about each of these appearances down below in the description, and let's get started. In last place, Shrek the Third, a surprisingly bland addition to the franchise that just feels like a movie going through the motions. It kicks off with a series of scenarios trying to show how Shrek is a bad fit to be king, but instead it just makes him look like an incompetent imbecile. And then it kicks off on this adventure about tracking down King Arthur while Prince Charming is trying to take over the kingdom, and all of it just falls flat. King Arthur should be a really interesting addition to this specific franchise, but they just don't have anything interesting to do with King Arthur. They don't have a twist or a spin on him. He's just kind of there. Prince Charming is the villain, just comes off as uninspired and a bit of a rehash of what they did in the previous film. And so it just feels like all of the wit that made the first 2 films so special has just disappeared, and it's just a franchise trying to recapture the magic and failing at it entirely. In 5th place, Puss in Boots, and to be very clear, there's a pretty big gap between Shrek the Third and this film. I think that this is a solid, fun adventure where they took a standout character from the previous 2 Shrek films and put him front and center, and he's a character that absolutely can carry a movie, and they gave him some really great side characters, and Salma Hayek as an addition as that love interest. Always fun to see Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek on screen together. They have so much on-screen chemistry, even when it's just their voices and their cats. It has a lot of the best elements of the Shrek franchises, where it takes these classic fairy tales and turns them on their heads. The wit is still there. It is a fairly straightforward story that provides some opportunities for some twists and turns all along the way. The thing that holds this one back is that I simply don't think that Humpty Dumpty is a particularly good fit to be a character in a Puss in Boots film. Like, it just feels like an odd pairing to put those 2 together, and they don't complement each other particularly well. If I'm just sitting like, man, who would be a lot of fun to see with Puss in Boots? An egg that's insecure and not trustworthy. Much like in the story, how Humpty Dumpty kind of drags everything down, he also kind of drags down the movie. I feel like if they just found a way to have it be about these 2 cat burglars on some quest or something like that, it probably would have worked a little bit better. Next up, Shrek Forever After, and this is a huge improvement over Shrek the Third, though that's not exactly saying a lot. For me personally, I normally enjoy alternate timeline storyline, so heading in that direction with this particular franchise, I think just provides a bunch of fun opportunities and possibilities for my dogs to start barking in the background while I'm filming. Throwing me off a little bit there, Rhodey. I'll wait. So doing that with this specific franchise provides a whole bunch of just fun, opportunities and possibilities. Likewise, I find the villain Rumpelstiltskin to be the most fun and memorable villain of the main Shrek franchise. And along those same lines, I think this has the most clear plot of the main Shrek films, where there's a clear deception, there's clear objectives, there's clear motivations, there's a clear ticking clock. So you always know what Shrek is trying to do and why, and what the consequences are if he's not able to accomplish that. So you're able to buy into the story really well. However, the thing that just kind of feels missing here is just some of the spark just feels a little bit gone. It feels a little bit played out. It's not quite as witty as it used to be. It's a nice, sharp story, but the humor just doesn't have the bite that it used to have. Likewise, if we're going to kind of show Shrek throughout his life and now he's married and has kids, instead of actually telling a story about Shrek being a father and having kids, it just uses that as the inciting incident in the first few minutes to show how he's frustrated with the monotony of his life and how repetition it is.
Could you do that ogre roar of yours for my son? He's a big, big fan.
Hear the roar.
So that he makes a bad choice that takes him to a world where he does not have kids, only for them to come back in the last few minutes. So it's kind of an odd way to let's introduce kids into his story, into his life, just so he can tell a story about him not having kids. But overall, I think this is a solid entry because it does have such a clear story, such a clear arc for Shrek with everything that it's trying to do. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 6 Shrek films. Also, if you want to know my thoughts on all the DreamWorks movies, I did a ranking of all 39 DreamWorks films a couple years back when there were 39 DreamWorks films. You can see the supercut of that right up here. And also remember, if you're in New Orleans, Portland, Cleveland, or Orlando, I am planning on being in those cities over the next few months at the Fan Expo events and MegaCon in Orlando. So if you'd love to be there for one of my panels, come to one of the meet and greets, I'd love to see you there. In third place, the original Shrek. And what this movie did so well was come up with just this very inventive, clever way to tell a fairy tale that both plays into all of the tropes of all of these different fairy tales, tells a version of all these different stories, but then also turns them on their head entirely. And in doing so, it's just really clever, both on the big picture level and then with the individual scenes, moments, gags, bits, all of it at the same time. Also, another thing about this franchise is that in this movie in particular, it has a surprisingly large amount of edge to it. There's a lot of really dark jokes in this movie. And there's little jokes where they find eggs and it plays like a really sweet moment, and then it cuts to them cooking those eggs and eating them. There's all these jokes that are wow, that had a surprisingly large amount of bite to it with what they were going for in this movie. I think in general, on a story level, it feels a bit more scattershot here, where it's more about setting up the world, the characters, the bits, than it is fully investing in the specific journey that Shrek is on. You're discovering what the story is and what it's all about along the way, and you don't realize what it's about until you're in the third act of the film. So a really fun, witty, clever take on these stories that we're so familiar with. Our runner-up, Shrek 2, a movie that takes everything that worked about the original Shrek and gives you more of it.
Say something crazy like I'm wearing ladies' underwear.
I'm wearing ladies' underwear.
But because the movie starts with Shrek and Fiona together, it's able to really focus in on their relationship and take them on a very clear journey from beginning to end. And in fact, the movie ends up having kind of like three big character arcs all kind of going on at the same time, with Shrek learning how to humble himself and not be so stubborn and try and be more gracious towards people that don't understand him. Fiona understanding Shrek's perspective on why he's so distant about certain people. And then as well, the king realizing really how awful he's kind of been all along the way. So you get three different arcs in the film, all tying into the same plot. And it just kind of comes together really well. You also get the addition of some great side characters. Of course, the standout being Puss in Boots, just a fantastic, fun, scene-stealing character that, of course, was so fun and watchable that he's gotten his own franchise on his own. And so for me, this is a movie that just takes all the good stuff about Shrek, gives you more of it, and then gives a more focused story and better character arcs. So a better version of the first Shrek. But coming in first place is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Here it feels like they brought in some new blood that have a new bag of tricks, a bunch of new animation technology, and give us this new and improved version of the franchise, but without abandoning what made it so good in the first place. It has a more focused story that I think of all of these movies does the best job of pulling together plot, character arc, and themes into a cohesive package that just fits together, where each of the elements ties into the other one and amplifies all of them.
I have 9 lives.
And how many times have you died already?
But while still delivering all the laughs, all the adventure, all the lively characters that you want from a movie in this franchise.
No, Puss in Boots doesn't need a spotter. Watch.
It's fresh, it's witty, it's clever, but it doesn't just feel like a rehash of what came before. The other great thing here is that this has by far the best animation of the entire franchise. Now, to compare a 20-year-old CGI animated film to a modern day one, obviously the technology is much better now than it was even 10 years ago, but of course it's much better than it was 20 years ago. But beyond simple, like, advances in technology that allow for a lot more texture and everything going on, this movie has a very artistic flair to the way that it visualizes things, the way that it does the animation that really wasn't as prominent and present in any of the other films in this franchise. So when you put it all together, it has all the humor that I want from a movie in this franchise. It has all the adventure I want, has all the lively characters, but it also has a much more focused story with a great character arc for Puss in Boots, and all of it's done with phenomenal animation. So for me, that makes it number 1 on this list. Be sure to join me down below in the comment section with your ranking. You can check out my ranking of all of the Dreamworks films right over there. And if you'd like to meet me in person and you're in New Orleans, Cleveland, Portland, or Orlando, remember to check out the description for the details on those Fan Expo events. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.